Welcome to another episode of Cigar Chat. This week we're doing a Cigar Chat Roundtable with just me and Jason. So we'll be here talking about, some of the news that's been going on in the cigar industry, and then answering whatever kind of questions you guys have. My name's Tripp. I'm here with my co-host Jason. We're broadcast live on Facebook, around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network, and of course available on YouTube or your favorite podcast catcher. Jason, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Really happy to be taking a break from the week and smoking a cigar, drinking a little whiskey.
Yeah, me too. It's been a stressful week for me. Things have just been weird and different. I guess I'll talk about what I'm smoking first before we really get into things. I'm smoking an Underground Maduro. This is the Corona Viva. If it'll stop focusing on my ugly face. But it won't, so oh well. What are you smoking tonight?
I'm smoking a Blanco 9.
Nice. Some good old Connecticut broadleaf action.
Good old Connecticut broadleaf. Triple Lajero going on.
Mm-hmm. So, what do we have to talk about this week? One of the big things is the premium cigar exemption and predicate date change were included in the fiscal year 2019 appropriations bill. So what that means, that doesn't mean that the FDA is going away, that cigars are exempt or anything, but it does mean, first of all, it's a really good sign that it's being included so early, since the recent appropriations bill just went through, I think less than a month ago, and cigars were kind of pulled out of there at the last minute, and the fact that I'm blanking on which house it is, whether it's the Senate or the House of Representatives. I think it's the House.
It's the House of Representatives, and I think it's more specific than just the House because it's like an appropriations committee within the House that attaches these things to this bill.
Yeah, I think there's I don't know. I think there's something like 30 or 40 people in the appropriations committee. But it's a good sign. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. It's still probably about a year out if they keep delaying it like they did this year. That's kind of what the appropriations bills are. My loose understanding of it is the appropriations bills basically keep the government from shutting down. And so they're including this. So if they approve the fiscal plan for 2019, this will be included unless it gets pulled out again. So we're probably going to have to wait another year or at least almost a year, because I think the current one expires the beginning of April of next year. It's possible that they'll vote on it before then, but as history has shown, it's not really that likely.
Yeah, and something that I was doing a little research on just kind of laws and bills related to this. And it seems like this is the kind of thing to where if they're consistent about putting this on there every year, eventually it might stick. It's one of those things that, sometimes you have to put it on there for 3 or 4 years in a row, but then eventually they're like, okay, this is like the 4th time we've seen this. It must be important. So.
Yeah, exactly. And my feeling was this year, because they were like minutes to midnight kind of deadline this year, where they finally voted on it the day that the government or the day before the government would have shut down if they didn't pass it. So my feeling was basically cigars were kind of one of those things that was like, we don't want to argue about this, so let's just take it out this time and try next time when there's more time to argue. Because, the only thing worse than cigars not getting exempted is cigars being responsible for a government shutdown.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where there were so many other tumultuous political topics that they were going through that the cigars was probably like a low-hanging fruit. Okay, we can concede this to get something more important to us through at the time. So that's probably what happened.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's good news. It shows that the topic continues to be on the minds of lawmakers. So that makes me hopeful.
Yeah, it's a good sign, but it's not necessarily, great news. It's good news.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah, I
crazy.
think in in the grand scheme of things, I think the problem with this is that since these budgets are year to year, it's always a band-aid fix. Um, I don't know. I don't know what the permanent answer would be. I think that
Yeah,
something drastic would have to be done. Like they would have to make a law that was specific to cigars and just pass that as kind of a standalone thing or something along those
yeah,
lines.
that's actually a really good point. So if this did make it into the fiscal appropriations bill that gets passed next year, um, like if it's part of the fiscal plan 2019, that all that really means is that cigars are exempt for 2019.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure about the change uh, to the grandfather date because they're moving it to 20 or they're planning to move it to 2014 based on this bill. Um, I'm not sure whether that would stay or if that's something that would be removed later. Uh, but that's the important thing to note is that even if this did pass, it wouldn't necessarily mean that cigars are exempt forever.
Yeah, it seems like, based on what I've been able to gather, the only way to make cigars truly exempt forever would be for them to amend what was it, that Tobacco Control Act of 2009 that gives the FDA authorization to do this.
Yeah. Um, but I'm hopeful. And in much worse news, the other thing that's going on is Canada has, as of yesterday, has approved plain packaging, which is a terrible blow to the industry in Canada. It basically means that if you go into a cigar store or a tobacconist, really, tobacconists in Canada, because of the high price of cigars, they tend to uh, they tend to not get they tend to not get all of their business from cigars. They tend to be a cigar shop that also sells cigarettes and vape and stuff like that. Um, but if you go into one of those stores once this takes effect, it's going to be a bunch of black boxes with giant warning labels that just say in small text the name of what you're buying at the bottom, uh, which is terrible for the cigar industry.
It's
I
just
mean,
really sad. It's like a lot of people put a lot of work into the packaging, bands, the visual presentation of cigars, and by doing this, you're just removing that from the equation.
yeah, and the intention of the design for cigars is not always to sell the product; it's to
Mhm.
express art. Um, and sometimes that art helps the product sell. Sometimes, a lot of really good selling cigars come in a plain cedar box that just has the name kind of stamped on it with the logo. Not all of them are these, beautiful motifs that are on the inside of the box and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it will be especially because Canada Cubans are such a big factor up there. They're a big part of the market, and a huge part of Cuban cigars is the presentation and the boxes and
Yeah.
the bands. And I mean, there's going to be a whole host of people that are going to be paranoid now that they're buying a counterfeit Cuban because most people get comfort in, this band looks like the legitimate band from Habanos.
Yeah, I didn't even think of
Like,
that. Like it would be way harder to spot a fake with plain packaging. I
yeah.
mean, if the band is just I don't know what color they're going to be. I think they're supposed to be like green with yellow words or something hideous. Um, but I like if you get a I don't know PSD4 from from your buddy, um, you have no way of knowing because it just is a black band that says Partagas Series D4 in white letters or something like
Mhm.
that, and that would be very easy to fake. It's not like the fancy holograms and stuff like that, or when they have very specific measurements around borders and all that sort of stuff.
If you're interested in seeing examples of this, you can look at Australia, like Google Cuban cigars Australia or something, and you'll see some of this because they have a similar law. And it also kind of makes each individual cigar just look like a blending sample, where you just have that a plain colored band with some basic type on it that says what it is.
Yeah. And not only is that horrible for people trying to market a new cigar, um, it's it's just not good for consumers. I mean, it gives the illusion that there's no variety when there actually is.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think unfortunately what that will probably do is it weeds out all but the most hardcore consumer, basically.
Hmm.
So it's just very sad.
Yeah, it really, like right now, a novice can walk into a cigar shop and look at the shelves and say, I like the look of that one, and buy it, and
Hmm.
feel comfortable doing that. This would put a lot more weight on the tobacconist, which isn't that part actually isn't necessarily a bad thing, because I feel like there aren't enough tobacconists out there who are like asking what you like and what you're looking for, and can really recommend a cigar based on flavor rather than just based on what they're being told. Um,
Hmm.
but the whole fakes thing is what really worries me that I hadn't really thought about before.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, probably not so much from reliable tobacconists within Canada, but it's kind of like that secondary fake market to where somebody says, "Oh, I bought this from so and so in Ontario, but because Canada has plain packaging, this is what it looks like." But in reality, they're just fakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's terrible. It really sucks, and I think it's going to be kind of devastating to the industry up in Canada. I'll let you pick the next topic. What else do you want to
okay.
talk about?
So, as a little follow up, kind of part two of the FDA stuff was the federal court this week did
Oh
rule
yeah,
basically that the lawsuit put forth by the um, IPCPR and all the different organizations, they they basically they denied it, saying that the FDA is going about regulating premium cigars in accordance to the law. And one of the specific things was the warning label requirement. Um, the lawsuit was challenging that, but
yeah,
the judge on the case, I thought it was interesting that in his commentary about it, he says that he actually disagrees with what the FDA is doing, and he says that he thinks it's an unfair business practice for them to be requiring people to move forward with these warning label requirements while they're in the process of reevaluating the regulation in general. Because if
hmm
for some reason they end up changing these requirements, which they certainly could do, all these companies are going to have spent a lot of money developing their boxes and their labels, and then they may have to change all of that at the last minute.
yeah, which is expensive.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I thought it was really interesting that the judge. I mean, the judge basically said this is wrong and immoral, but it's not illegal.
Hmm.
So there's nothing we can do about it. Um, so unless Congress does end up saving it, the legal cases aren't looking good,
Yeah, and it
which is not great.
definitely points the finger back at Congress and the Senate to say that if you disagree with this, you need to change the law that is allowing this to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a
Um,
great week of news. There was one very minor thing that was good news from all of that that I picked out. That was that it sounds like individual tobacconists that
oh yeah,
make
I
their
forgot
own
about
pipe
that.
tobacco blends, they don't have to register as a manufacturer.
Yeah,
It
legally
didn't,
they're not manufacturing tobacco there, or manufacturing products, so they can blend as much as they want.
and I think that makes sense because if you buy in pipe tobacco, like you can go out and buy a pound of one specific kind of pipe tobacco, like Burley or Virginia or whatever. So you're buying that from someone who's manufactured and imported it, and you're literally just putting it in a jar and mixing it together and letting it sit for a while.
Yeah, and people may not know because we most of our listeners are cigar smokers, kind of exclusively. Not all of them or not many of them are pipe smokers as well. It's worth mentioning that a lot of like if you go into a cigar shop and they have pipe tobacco, you'll see they have jars of pipe tobacco, they have baggies of pipe tobacco or whatever they have. Um, And a lot of times, almost every time, they'll have a house blend or multiple house blends, and they're just blending together tobacco they buy on their own and packaging that. But again, the judge did say that that is not illegal, which under the understanding of the FDA rulings, that was illegal before this case.
Yeah, they were going to treat all of those house blends as marketed products. So if you had a house blend after the predicate date, you had to go through this process for it. But it seems like all of that is out the window now. So it's a very small piece of good news, but
yeah, it's a very small piece of good news. But
something.
You know, it's at least something. So before we go to our break and then get to some more stuff, Vincenzo Scarduzio wants to know, he wonders how big the non-Cuban market is in Canada. It's bigger than you would probably think. So John McTavish, who's been on the he used to host this show. He's recently been co-hosting some Sharing Our Pairings episodes with us. He works at a retailer up in Canada, and from what he's told me, in his shop, it varies from shop to shop, but in his shop, it's about 50-50. There are shops that are, I think the general understanding is that it's about 40-60, with most people preferring Cubans. But the interest in the last 5 years of non-Cuban cigars has been going way up, kind of like it has been in Europe. In Europe, you used to only find Cuban cigars, and now, I know of one shop in Amsterdam called Cigaragua, and as you can tell based on the name, they're very, very focused on Nicaraguan cigars, which is pretty rare for somewhere like that. And even in Central America, I know of a couple shops in the Dominican Republic that specialize in non-Cuban cigars, and not even just Dominican cigars. They're in the Dominican Republic, but they carry stuff like Warped. They were actually they're called Cigar Market in, I don't remember what the name of the city is. It's the large city in the southeast of Dominican Republic. But they were the only retailer, I believe, outside of the U.S., or at least outside of the U.S. and Europe, that got Black Honeys from Warped. Wow. That was a really limited product. People only got a few bundles each, and they're in Dominican Republic, and they sought out and ordered a super limited edition Nicaraguan cigar. So the interest in non-Cubans is ever growing, even in countries outside of the U.S.
And I think I don't know for sure, but I think many Nicaraguan and Dominican cigars, when they go into Canada, they try to come up with a pricing strategy that makes their cigars competitive. Yeah. Because if you go to Canada and just want to buy run-of-the-mill Cubans, they're very expensive.
They're crazy expensive.
It's somewhat shocking.
I'm trying to think of the cigar that I always go to. My go-to Cuban is the Partagas Serie D4, so that's the one that comes to my mind. Those are about usually $8 to $12 a piece if you're buying them in Mexico or wherever, anywhere but Cuba, basically, in Central America. In Europe, they're a little more expensive. In Canada, that's a $40 cigar.
Yeah.
A Bahique, which is a $40 cigar everywhere else, is $120. You basically just triple the price of whatever it is.
I think when
I know Mombacho, you're wearing a Mombacho hat, which reminded me in Canada, I've heard that Tierra Volcans are about $17, which down here would be $5. That's a steal, and they do that because they know the prices are so high in Canada. That's how they can get some market share.
Yeah, the prices are crazy. I've been to a cigar shop up in Vancouver, BC, and it's fun to look, but I'm all right, I'll buy cigars back home.
Yeah, and Vancouver's cheaper than places like Calgary, Alberta. Alberta has the highest tobacco taxes in Canada. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Thank one of our sponsors. This segment is brought to you by store.cigarfederation.com. Go there for all your cigar needs. Right now, you can buy the I always like to, like, I say this every week, but I like to highlight a cigar when we're talking about either a manufacturer or a store that's sponsoring. You can buy the Blanco 9 that Jason is smoking tonight.
These are really good. I highly recommend the Lancero. And if you want a quick smoke, grab those that half Lancero.
Oh,
those are
Menudos.
cheap. Those are really good.
Yeah, those run about $3 or $4 each, I think, at the most.
Yeah.
They're handmade half Lanceros that are really good, and they come in a little 5-pack. All right, so what are we going to talk about next, Jason?
All right, so I had kind of I just dropped a huge chunk of ash right on my keyboard. I had kind of a fun little topic. So every year, Crown Heads releases their Las Calaveras. So this year, 2018. So this year's release is a Mexican San Andres wrapper, and the label is I think it's kind of a cool green color. It reminds me of if you go to Mexico and they have those little painted skulls for like Dia de los Muertos.
Oh yeah, sugar skulls. Yeah.
It's totally that green that those skulls are painted.
Yeah,
so
it totally is.
It's pretty cool looking. So I was kind of looking over the things, and I thought that it might be kind of fun if we try to predict what next year's wrapper is going to be, because I was looking over the history, and every year they use a different wrapper. So far, they have used Ecuadorian Habano Oscuro, Ecuadorian Habano Rosado, Connecticut Broadleaf, Ecuadorian Maduro, and then this year the Mexican San Andres. So what do you think they might throw on there next year?
I like that. I like this exercise. I'm trying to think because and where are they being made this year? EP Carrillo?
Let me see
know?
Because
I know most of the previous years were done at My Father. I think last year they switched to EP Carrillo.
I think this one is being made at EP Carrillo. I'm not sure about that though.
Man, I'm trying to think of a wrapper that they might use. I don't think he would use Pennsylvania Broadleaf. I don't think that's his style. I'm gonna guess Nicaraguan Corojo, because I love that wrapper.
That's a good one. I thought about it a little bit, and I'm going with Ecuadorian Sumatra. Just as something.
I could see John picking that.
Different. And I thought about that one because they that's the wrapper they use on the My Father the Judge, and I think it gives that cigar kind of an interesting flavor.
Yeah, I think so too.
So you could probably do some interesting things with that. Well, we'll see. He'll run out of wrappers one of these years.
Yeah, he's gonna have to go back to the same wrappers that he already used at some point. I don't think there's any way around that. Why don't we talk about Quesada next? So Vincenzo Scarduzio asked about Quesada, and we had a little bit to talk about that. So I know I had you pull it up. So recently there was a departure after kind of a series of departures over the last few months. And we'll go over the story in a minute. But who was the most recent departure?
So his name is I might be pronouncing this wrong, but it's Hostos Fernandez Quesada. So he's a member of the Quesada family. His title was like VP of Product Development. I assume that means he was like the chief blender or master blender or whatever you would call it, as far as
or at least heavily involved in the blending and creation process for new brands.
Yeah. So he exited. Yeah, and it just said that he's pursuing new opportunities. Just a very generic statement.
Yeah, which basically means he left and he's not ready to announce where he's going yet. Which isn't a big surprise. So the story of Quesada so far is I'll try to remember specific dates as much as I can. In November, I think it was. It could have been It could have been late October when Terrence left, who was their sales manager. He was basically, he was kind of the face of the company a little bit because in most people's eyes, Manolo has always been really the face of the company, but he's been the face of the company that goes to events, and he's all over the place. And when you see an interview, it was usually with Terrence, and he announced he was leaving. He went to Casa Fernandez, of course. Then within a few months of that, we got news that Quesada had, correct me if I'm wrong here, they had failed to pay an invoice on cigars that they had received and shipped out already, for, I think it was two different companies that they were manufacturing and distributing for.
Yeah. So they were taken to like the equivalent of small claims court or something over what seems like a relatively small amount of money to me, at least.
It was like $50,000 or something like that.
I mean, my business experience is in corporate environments where you can put that on a PO and only 2 people have to approve it. So
yeah. But I mean, for cigars, that's probably, minimum 50,000 cigars.
Mm-hmm.
Likely less than that. I mean, it could be as few as 10,000 or so. But still, I mean, somebody wasn't paid for cigars that they had made and were sold to shops that they should have been paid for. And then both of those companies ended up leaving Quesada as a distributor, and I assume they left them as a manufacturer as well, but I'm not sure. I could have some of those details wrong because I'm just doing that off the top of my head. And then there was another departure at some point within there.
Somebody left, but it didn't make big news because I don't think the person was a member of the Quesada family.
Okay.
And they definitely were a senior member of the company, but it wasn't a real public facing kind of a job.
Yeah. So, I mean, what this all means is things are not looking great for Quesada. I mean, I don't know if we're going to necessarily get news that they're going bankrupt or anything like that soon, but it seems like they're having some struggles, whether that's monetarily or with management. It seems like things just are not working out well.
Yeah,
it worries me.
Yeah, my take is that if the company's fine, these people are leaving because there's some kind of a culture issue or there's some kind of a management issue, and you can only take so much of that. Like if you're not vibing with what's going on at a company, you got to move on.
Yeah.
The most optimistic point of view would be that maybe Quesada is so locked into what they're doing that these people really do want new opportunities. They want the chance for career growth.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible.
Things, and it's like maybe Quesada is sort of just not the place for that. I don't know.
I got some anonymous feedback, so I won't reveal who sent me this. But from their point of view, the most successful product that Quesada has is Nat Sherman, because they're producing most of what Nat Sherman makes. And if Nat Sherman left Quesada, I think that would kind of spell death for them. And so does this anonymous person. At that point, he thinks they would basically just be a catalog company that makes Fonsecas and stuff like that, like the kind of more mid-tier cigars that they're not as well known for, but they've been producing for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm keeping an eye on it because I don't know how it's going to turn out. I wish I did, but
another thing that
isn't
a great sign is that there have been some insane deals on Quesada products.
Yeah.
Like 5 cigars for $5 kind of things. And these are not the cheap things. I mean, these are cigars that when they came out, at least were in the, $8 to $10 range.
Yeah, that's true. And that's also never a good sign. I mean, a lot of times that happens after the badness starts to go down. But we can't see things from the retailer side if they're not fulfilling orders anymore for some of these, or if they're taking things off the price sheet without announcing it. We wouldn't know, but they may be discontinuing products and not telling anybody because they're trimming down what they have.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we don't know. But hopefully things turn out well, because I like a lot of Quesada cigars. They make a lot of really good cigars.
Yeah, they're every year I enjoy the Oktoberfest.
Mm-hmm.
They're what's your kind of special cigar that has the
Reserva Privada.
Yeah, those are good.
Yeah, I've never had a bad one.
So, hopefully it's just a bump in the road, and they can kind of come back from it and continue.
Yeah, I really hope so. Let me see what else I have on here. So one of the other big pieces of news that came out this morning is Villiger opened a new factory in Brazil. As far as I know, they're the first manufacturer to really have a factory in Brazil. I mean, almost everybody uses Brazilian tobacco to some extent. But I wasn't able to find any information on other cigar factories that are in Brazil that are like producing any kind of cigar that's been any premium cigars that have garnered any attention.
Yeah. Did it say where in Brazil the factory is?
It might have. Let me check. Let me go back to the press release I posted today. See what she says. Because I don't recall off the top of my head. I do have a couple cigars that were made at that factory, so they've been open long enough to make cigars that are ready to smoke now. I haven't smoked them yet, but obviously I'll let you guys know.
I don't know a ton about Brazil, but I've heard from several people that Brazil's one of those places that there are certain parts of Brazil that are wonderful. You're happy to be there, but there are other parts of Brazil that you should not ever go to.
I don't think it says anywhere exactly. It's near the second largest city in the state of Bahia, Feira de Santana.
Okay, I feel like I heard that name get dropped around the time of the Olympics when that was going on down there. So it's a major area.
Back to I forgot to mention this when we were talking about crown heads. Vincenzo thinks that they're going to make a Candela. I don't know about that. Candelas are hot right now, but I don't know how John feels about Candelas. I think this is going to be a question that we ask him at IPCPR this year. We're going to have to ask him, at least posit our guesses at what we think the wrapper might be. And if you're watching on YouTube or something, let us know what you think the wrapper might be.
Yeah, a Candela. I don't know if Candela would go with the Las Calaveras theme very well.
Yeah, that's true, because it's always been kind of a stronger cigar, at least generally. What else do we have to talk about today?
Let's see. I didn't have too many more news topics. There's been a few cigar announcements. The new Illusion Singular is out for 2018. It's called the Turin.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a double Corona. I don't know too much about it, but those are always good. I always like to try those every year.
Yeah, me too. Everything Illusion makes is gold for me. Every Singulare has been very good. So I'm excited to try that one. And I know the one-off series, or not one-off series, the one-off line will be shipping at some point soon. Dion has been saying he's taking orders for them now. I'm really excited to see how that goes, because I was a big fan way back in the day when they were out in the early 2000s, or the mid-2000s, I guess, like 2006 or so. So I'm curious to see what Dion does with that, because I know it was a brand that he always liked, and, now that they're defunct, he decided to bring them back.
Yeah. And then another one that was announced that sounds like it really is a brand new cigar is the Aganorsa Leaf Signature.
Oh, yeah. And that hasn't even really been formally announced.
No, just a
somebody. I'm trying to remember who it was. Somebody was at the factory, and they posted a picture of it on Instagram or something, and that caught somebody's eye, and it started making its rounds in the news. As far as I know, they haven't announced anything official yet.
And I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it. If it's going to be kind of a higher tier brand like the Casa Fernandez Miami series, or if it's going to be more of a mid-priced kind of thing. So
I don't know. We'll see.
I really like the Aganorsa Leaf label. It's kind of like that arm holding a bundle of tobacco.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I like their label.
And then another one that's coming, I think it's shipping now, is they have Romacraft is doing the Cro-Magnon Mandible in a box press, and they're calling it the Mastodon.
So those shipped out earlier this week. I know Cigar Hustler sent an email today. They must have gotten them in this morning or something, and I think they're doing like packs, kind of the way that they did before with like the Black Irish and stuff, where basically you buy a sampler and it includes one of those.
That's cool. I think sometimes I think that stuff like that is interesting because the Cro-Magnon in that what is it, a 4.5 by 60? It's a good cigar. It's like one of the few 60 ring gauge cigars that I will smoke and I like.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like you get lockjaw smoking it. But they really managed to make the 60 worth it. Like for me, a 60 ring gauge has to be better than like a 50 ring gauge because I have to deal with smoking a 60 ring gauge. Oh, and Jared Grillet says about Illusion, they tend to hit him harder with nicotine than others, except for the Epernay. But that was 3 or 4 years ago, so it might be time to revisit. I think you should revisit. A lot of the Illusion stuff isn't super strong. Most of it is in like the medium realm. The thing that gets you with Illusion is that in their core line, which their core line, if you've only seen them at the stores, you may not realize their core line is a white label with black lines and then black text. All of their other labels are similar, but for their different lines. So they've got the gold for the Epernay, the red background on black for the Maduros, and then I almost said the Phantoms. The Singulares are white and silver, or silver on white rather, and then the Hot 10 is like kind of, I don't remember what color the text is, but I know the band is mostly silver. But they're all similar bands, they're just different. But with the white labels, it's actually a completely different blend for every one of those cigars. They're all in the same line, but they have completely different blends. So they range from like the low end of medium to the high end of strong. So you have to kind of research which one you're going to get before you know the strength level, unless you just go in blind. But I feel like the Singulares aren't super strong. The Hot 10 is strong, but not crazy strong. I mean, it's not like Craft.
It depends on which Singularity you get to. I'm trying to remember like the Phantom, I think is a stronger one.
Yeah, the Phantom is pretty strong.
But like is it the Kodash? That might be it. That doesn't seem as strong.
Yeah, the Kadash is what I call it. I've never heard it pronounced, so I'm not sure. But like the Kadash and the Miserere are pretty much.
The ECCJ 20th is kind of a good medium, I would say.
Well, that's the Epernay is based on that blend. I think the ECCJ is actually a slightly stronger version, but it's pretty similar to the Epernay series. And he also says he's waiting for Weaselitos, since we were talking about Roma. An interesting thing about the Weaselitos, I asked Skip, and he said, I think I might have mentioned this on a previous show, but I'll mention it again. I asked him because I was wondering, are those all the same blend, or are they going to be individual blends that go with the original wrappers? And it's all going to be the same blend, just with the 3 different wrappers, which I'm excited to I'm excited to try that. I think that's going to be interesting, being able to get a better idea of the differentiation between the different wrappers that he uses: the San Andreas, the Connecticut Broadleaf, and the Ecuadorian Habano.
Mhm.
And Jeremy Miller wants to know what we're smoking. I'm smoking a Undercrown Corona Viva.
I got the
classics.
Blanco 9.
And if only these C920s would focus once in a while. But you know.
In anytime, it's better if the wrapper isn't shiny. Anytime there's shiny stuff on the wrapper, it doesn't want to focus.
Oh, that's true, and that's a pretty oily wrapper. All right, what else do you want to talk about? Any other topics on your mind or in your notes?
Oh, so where I was originally going to go with the Cro-Magnon Macedon is that I've done it a couple times where it's really interesting to take a cigar where you get, if you can find the same blend that's offered in a box press and a non-box press, and smoke them at the same time, you notice that the box press is a little bit different than the round one. And it's hard to explain and quantify, but if you do it, you really do notice a subtle difference.
To me, box press tend to taste like, I actually did that pretty recently. They weren't side by side, but they were a couple days apart. But it was the Medulla Oblongata from Asylum. So their Medulla Oblongata series, the whole thing behind it is they make the exact same cigar and then box press half and leave half round. And there was there was a weird little video that was posted of Christian Aroa weighing a box press next to a traditional Parejo, and making sure that he took every one out of a box and was weighing each one side by side to make sure they all weighed the same, since that's the whole point. But I found the box press version to be a little more intense, a little more spice, a little more sweet, just a touch stronger, and not necessarily stronger in strength, but stronger in flavor.
Yeah, I've done that with the I think it's the Aquitaine, the blockhead. You can get so it's like you smoke the blockhead and then you smoke an EMH, and theoretically it should be very similar.
All right, I got to try that. I need to get some EMHs then, because I've got a box of blockheads.
Yeah, so I think EMH would be the one.
It might be. I'll have to do some research before I go crazy, but
that might actually be an interesting thing for us to do for a random show one day. Is to find a cigar and smoke the box press and the normal one kind of at the same time and see how they differ.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. And maybe we could do it with the Medulla Oblongata, because they just had the Maduros just came out. I thought that was a very good cigar.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do our last plug here, since we're almost there. This last segment is brought to you by none other than Drew Estate. They good. I'm wearing my Pappy Van Winkle Cigars hat with the little Drew Estate logo on the side. This is actually a really good time to talk about what I was getting ready to talk about anyway. We went to a Drew Estate event last week with Fabian because he was in town. That's actually why we didn't have a show, in case you weren't up to date. It was fun. I had planned on doing an interview and stuff, but we just ended up hanging out, which was actually kind of better. We just got to spend some time with Fabian. He gave us a little peek behind the curtain with acid, which I talked about a little bit yesterday, how I'm not going to mention the stuff on the show just because I really feel like he wasn't supposed to tell us some of that stuff. But I learned more about acid than I ever thought I would.
Yeah, it was really cool. And that was a busy event too. I've been to that. I've been to several events at that shop, and that was one of the more busy events that I've ever seen.
Yeah, Fabian can draw a crowd, man. He knows how to do it. And I mean, they had some good deals. I got a free hat. My father-in-law bought a bunch of cigars, so he got a hat and an ashtray and a cutter. Then he won in the raffle. He won another ashtray, which was one of those pewter ones.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and it was good to spend some time with Fabian, since It seems like nobody ever makes it out here, but in the last like 3 months, a bunch of people have. So I'm hoping that's like uh, a sign of good things to come. Like we're gonna see more events out here because
Yeah.
events are few and far between.
Yeah, it's definitely cool because I think the Northwest is a difficult and expensive place for most people to get to because most people are based out of Florida or Texas or something. So you're literally flying across the country. And
Yeah,
you drive like a madman when you're up here because you're hitting Portland, Seattle, and the places in between. And the western states are big, so you're
yeah,
driving
exactly.
hours to get
You're
between
driving
shops.
3 hours to Seattle. If you head down to Medford, that's like 4 hours south of here, if not more. It
Yeah.
might be like 5 or 6. But I know they have a cigar shop down there that does a lot of events, and a lot of people end up hitting that, and then Portland, and then Seattle, and it's a ton of driving and a ton of traffic, and
Mhm.
and I mean, to be honest, the cigar market out here just is like kind of in its infancy. It feels like where people are just starting to get into like more boutique-y kind of brands. For a long
Yeah.
time, it was basically, I mean, we've talked about this before. Each shop has like their own brand that they're the only one that carries that brand. And if you want that brand, that's where you go. And so they end up like, you end up with a lot of people who just smoke whatever the nearest shop carries. Um,
Mhm.
and then it's stuff that it's not necessarily bad or anything, but they don't end up smoking a lot of variety. And so then when a new brand comes in, that new brand doesn't always do well because people are used to just smoking the Perdomos or the Fuentes or the Drew Estates or whatever it is their shop carries.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's really cool to see some of the smaller manufacturers getting out here and getting more of a humidor presence.
Yeah. So Vincenzo wants to know if they had the Liga Privada #9 Corona Viva.
No.
Unfortunately, not.
We
Um,
asked. We did try.
yeah, we asked. I talked to Fabian about it a little bit. So they did have. If you've ever been to a Drew Estate event, they always have in the last year and a half, maybe 2 years. If you go to a Drew Estate event and you buy a cigar and tell them or show them that you have the Drew Diplomat app, you get a free cigar. It's always kind of an exclusive cigar. For a while, it was the Pappy Lonsdale's. It's like an event exclusive size. For a while, it was the Undercrown Sun-Grown Pigs. Um, they did Velvet Rats at one point. They did. I'm trying to remember what else. And right now, they're kind of transitioning, I think, from the Hoya 50th, which is like I think it's based on the Classico. It's got a blue. It's got the same label as the Classico, but it's kind of a blue label, and it's in like Lonsdale. But they had that and the T52 Corona Vivas, were the free cigars. So we each have a T52 Corona Viva, but no Liga 9 Corona Vivas. So the Liga 9 Corona Vivas were an exclusive release for Cigars International for that, what was it, like Cigar Mega Fest or something like that?
Yeah,
Some event that they had.
and it was a particular retail location for Cigars
Yeah, it was
International
only the
that had those.
superstore. Um,
So
we may see them again in the future, but for now, they are an exclusive for that one event, which is
I think
sad. I really wanted to smoke that cigar.
I don't know if it was Fabian or the other sales rep, Matt, that was there that said that they will come out eventually, but just not yet.
Yeah, and that's how the press release was phrased. They're not. The press release was phrased kind of. It's an exclusive for this event. It wasn't. It's exclusive to this event. They made it sound like there more will be coming someday. But we were hoping that it would be an immediate release, and it's not. So I don't know if we're going to see him this year, or next year, or what. But I think eventually we're going to see him.
Yeah, and eventually we're going to see this T52 too. So
I hope so. I hope it doesn't end up like like the underground pig, the sun-grown pig. Um,
yeah,
that one's not out yet. I mean, based on the way Drew Estate does business, I think eventually we'll see those sizes. They've moved away from doing sizes that only exist once and then go away forever. From what we've seen recently is, after a year or two, they'll probably release those to the public.
yeah. After hanging with Fabian at the event, we need to have him back on the show and maybe smoke some like Tabak Especials or something with some.
Yeah, or try some different acids, because he gave us like one thing that acid does not do great at, and he's completely aware of because it's so difficult, is unless you go to the Drew Estate website and read the description of each one, it's hard to tell the difference, because they've got like, I don't know how many, but probably 50 SKUs of different blends. I mean, and it's not just different sizes, it's different blends for everyone. And a lot of people go straight in for the Cuba because that's the easiest one to find, but it's also like ultra sweet, like smoking cotton candy at the state fair. And for me, like that completely turns my palate off. Like my palate nopes out of that one. So he gave us an idea of, you know, the acids we might be able to enjoy a little bit more, because I have smoked a couple that I've liked, like not something that I'd smoke every day, but you know, I think that I now have a better idea of what in the range I might like a little more.
Yeah, there's the big thing for me was that he said that the red ones do not have a
ones
sweet
with the red
tip.
label aren't sweetened, which I mean that's part of it for me is how sweet those tips are, and the sweetness barely goes away on a lot of them. But yeah, like the I think it's the liquid and the nasty, which I've never smoked either of them, so I have no idea what they taste like. But I would be interested in giving them a shot, you know?
Yeah, try anything once.
All right, we have anything else to talk about before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. No other major news stories. This is always, I think, an interesting time of year because you're getting up into the IPCPR.
Yeah, we're ramping up for it, and everybody is like. So we might have. I mean, I was going to talk about this before we wrap up anyway, but we might have 2 episodes of sharing our or 2 episodes of Cigar Chat and an episode of sharing our pairings next week, because I asked a potential guest if he could come tonight, which was very short notice anyway. It was like less than a week. But you know, everybody's in meetings and like running around like a crazy person trying to get ready for IPCPR now. So scheduling is a lot harder for everybody, including us, because we're trying to prep for IPCPR too. And Chris Kelly wants to know what we think of the upsetters. I've only smoked one, so I can't totally say, like, I can't give like a full opinion, because I've heard some of the other cigars smoked differently and are better. For me, I smoked the Django, which is like a 5.5 or so by 56 or something like that. And for me, it was just too infused. Like, it was overpowering my palate. And I find when I get when my palate like feels like it's getting assaulted like that with too much flavor, I can't taste any of the tobacco, and that's when I'm like, why am I smoking this? I don't want to smoke this, because what my palate likes is tobacco, and that's the thing that like some of the acids that I've had do really good at, is you still taste tobacco. Like in the toast is super sweet, but you still taste broadleaf. And the upsetters for me, the one that I had was just so sweet and so infused and like floral that I didn't care for it. But what I was told after that is I pitched it at like probably half an inch in. Like I lit it and was like, I don't want to smoke this today. And I haven't gone back yet. But what I've heard is like only the first inch is like that. And after the first inch, the infusion kind of wears off and you end up getting more of like a tobacco flavor that's influenced by the infusion but doesn't get taken over. Okay. So I need to go try some more of those.
Interesting. Maybe those have like a reverse sweet tip or something.
Well, it's definitely got a sweetened tip, but from what I've heard, one of the local reps that reps for upsetters told me that only the first inch is really like that, and then it fades away a little bit, and it's more like a traditional cigar, which actually sounds kind of good. So I think I might have to try it again sometime.
Yeah, I have not smoked one yet, so I'm definitely open to give one a try.
Yeah, next time I'm at the shop, I'll probably buy one. The shop that carries them, that is. All right. Nothing else to talk about?
Nope, I think we covered everything.
All right. Well, then thank you everybody for listening or watching or commenting. We appreciate you guys. Everybody on the Armed Forces Radio Network, we appreciate you guys out there doing things we're not built to do, protecting our freedoms. We hope you get time for a cigar and to just relax a little bit and listen to the show and get a little piece of home. So thank you. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week, like I said, with possibly more likely 3 shows. So we look forward to seeing you. Everybody have a good one.